Oh, you can share screens here. Dope. Dope. Wow. All right. Peace and blessings, brothers and sisters. Once again, it is the Khazmozentric Myztik. I'm a Kuwahun. Um, Coming at you today with a discussion and a conversation, um, you know, about a television show. Now, it is what it is. I do watch shows. I tend to try to be selective in what I watch. There was a period in time in which I just decided to stop watching television because the images that presented to us um, is just derogative and negative towards the psyche of African Americans. And then I decided to start watching certain things just for the enjoyment value. So what I've noticed recently is a series of shows within the last decade, I would say within the last decade, that has gone against the norm of typical shows produced and has portrayed, people of African descent in a more positive light. And some of those shows, a few of those shows, have actually touched upon history within African American communities that was not widely known in the general public. One of those shows, uh, most recently, what was that show's name? I'm trying to remember. Hold on one second, it'll come to me. But anyway, the show covered the Tulsa race riots. I can't remember. Watchmen. I think it was The Watchmen. And the show covered the Tulsa race riots. And I guess, it's really weird to see that people hadn't really known about the Tulsa race riots. And that was kind of interesting, but, informative. Since then, another show has come out on HBO, and it's called LoveCraft Country, and it explores a few things within the African American community that is really interesting, and it was really cool, to tell you the truth. And so I'm going to share my screen with you. And let's see how this works. All right. So, what I've done is I've kind of looked at LoveCraft Country and analyzed it. What I will not do is go through exactly what happens in the show, but I will touch upon some of the themes that I found important. So, LoveCraft Country, this is just, and I'm going to go episode by episode, so these will be fairly quick. I have a little bit of commentary on the show, but I'm not going to spoil it for you all. So that's just not going to happen. So you can pretty much watch this and be cool with what you watch, by and large. So you can pretty much. All right. It's an HBO series. It was produced by Jordan Peele. It was written by Misha Green, and it was based on a book by Matt Ruff, right? So first of all, so the show in and of itself, it's about a man, Atticus Freeman, who's searching for his father, right? And finds a mysterious link that his family has with the supernatural, so to speak, okay? So that's the basis of the show in and of itself, right? So the show was written by this guy named Matt Ruff. He was born in New York in 1965 and was German American. His father worked in a religious hospital and his mother was a missionary. When he was young, he wanted to be a writer and grew up pursuing that as a career. He's authored several books, including LoveCraft Country, Bad Monkeys, 88 Names, Fool on the Hill, The Mirage, Sure Gas and Electric, and then Set This House in Order. So the interesting thing, though, is his books tend to be about sci-fi. His books tend to be sci-fi. I don't I don't read this person as an author, so I don't know his work. But LoveCraft Country was something that he put together in reference. He put African American history together with H.P. Lovecraft horror themes, so to speak. All right. So now the series, which was interesting, there's something that comes up in the series. There's a map looked at in the series, right? And this map shows where the father had went, right? But the interesting thing about this map is it was based upon something called the Negro Motorist Green Book, right? And the Negro Motorist Green Book, let me see, it was a travel guide that was in existence from 1936 to 1966. And it was created by this guy named Victor Hugo Green, who was an African-American mailman in New York City. It's a typo. Hope you can forgive that. I'm going to have typos in here. I didn't spell check and proofread it. So if you're going to be critical of that, then be critical of that, but whatever. And it was based off of Jewish travel guides that existed at the time, right? And it designated for African Americans safe places along American roads that they could go and reduce the amount of discrimination that they would face. It gave them information on restaurants, hotels, and gas stations that were amenable to African Americans that they could go to, right? So my great grandfather was actually married to a European, and when he was a black preacher in Kansas City, Missouri, and my great grandfather. And when he drove our passing, she definitely was, not, African American. I guess she was, half white, half Native American, but definitely looked. My great grandmother definitely looked white, and that was that. So, but anyway, there's a story in my family that when my grandfather was preaching and would do revivals down in the South, because we were based out of Kansas City, Missouri, and when he would travel, he would drive with my great grandmother in the back of the car. And whenever he would go along the road and stop at gas stations and hotels or whatever, he would always have to say that he was her chauffeur, so giving the image, in order for his safety, giving the image of being her servant. Wow, I couldn't even imagine having to do that. But that's what he had to do as a preacher in the South. That was just one of the things that he had to do in order to get his message out into the world. So it's very different than what we have to do or what we can do nowadays, whereas we don't even understand that type of thinking. We don't know what it's like to fear for our lives as we go to places. Now, I'm not going to say we don't know what it's like to fear for our lives as we travel, because that's totally not true. Like, I travel across the country all the time. If you pay attention to my channel, you see like I'm everywhere at all times. I'm in Connecticut, I'm in Vermont, I'm in Seattle, I'm in Chicago, I'm in Florida, I'm in Arkansas, I'm in Texas, I'm in Indiana, I'm in Memphis, I'm in Indianapolis. I visited the home of Michael Jackson. I'm in Kansas City. So I travel, and a lot of these places I drive to, except I flew to Seattle. But if it's like in the mid-region of the United States, if it's mid-region of the United States, I drive there. And I gotta admit, like, there is a subtle fear, or there is a subtle caution in my mind, am I safe as I drive across these roads? There was one time where I was traveling through Tennessee, and I made it into Kentucky, I think. But I was traveling through Tennessee or whatever, and I was following the GPS, and the GPS, took me on this off route. And I was, because I was trying to go crystal mining, crystal rock hounding and trying to look for labradorite in particular. And it took me to this crazy little town or whatever. It's just like, whatever. I went to the town, went to the crystal shop, had no issues there. But then as I got off and I started taking these back roads to try to get back to the main road, following GPS, it sucks about following GPS and not really knowing the roads per se. It took me into a place that was unfamiliar, and I was very cautious. Like, I became very much aware that my safety was at stake here. And so my safety and the safety of my wife. And so then, I made a concerted effort to get back on the highway and then travel to my destination. But I had to have that thought. That thought was definitely in my mind. It's either tapping into the thought atmosphere that's left over from the zeitgeist of that area, or really tapping into a true thought atmosphere that's out there that maybe African Americans are not safe in those certain areas, which is, I would say, which is semi-true. I mean, I've definitely traveled into Arkansas and seen, there was a sign in Arkansas that definitely promoted white pride, which is fine if you want to have white pride, but it's promoting white pride. Like it said, integration is, what did it say? It said integration is white annihilation. And so it was like, whoa, that's a really intense sign. And so then makes you hyper aware of your safety whenever you see those things. So, but anyway, just to talk about the racism that was in America back in the day, notice that this is a bus that says safe bus. So this is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Now, there was a guy in Winston-Salem, North Carolina that was, rising in the tobacco industry. And he had African-American workers, but he also had a problem. There was no public transportation for African-American workers because at that time, the public transportation only went to the white neighborhoods. And so what he had to do was essentially create this black-owned, this black-run at least, bus public transportation company. And notice the name is called Safe Bus. And so the indication is that as an African-American, you can get on this bus and be safe. Whereas back in those days, if you got on a bus and you didn't go to the back, also you didn't have to, you could sit anywhere on this safe bus, which is a privilege, that we don't consider or think about today. But it's called safe because you could get on the bus and not have to worry about the sanctity of your health or your body. Whereas that was not true in other areas of the country in which you had to get on the bus and get to the back of the bus. Or if there were no seats available, give your seat up for European American, which was totally wrong. But it's the way that people existed in this country for decades. And so now we're truly a privileged generation. And I don't think many of us recognize and realize that. But anyway, this safe bus was created as a result of that. But there's not, in my brief research, I didn't research this very long. There wasn't any other company that showed this type of service towards African American community. So every other place in the country so far that I know of, everybody was at the back of the bus. So LoveCraft Country also talks about sundown towns. Now, sundown towns were towns across America that was very explicit in saying to African Americans, do not let the sun catch you, don't let the sun go down on you in this town. And so you have that theme come up in LoveCraft Country as well, which I don't remember seeing any other film in which or any other media where that presented that aspect of American history. And so I wanted to show you some flyers. There's a book. Hold on a second. There is a book. I hope I have it up here. If not, I just have to get it another time. But it's called, here it goes. There's a book by James W. Lowen called Sundown Towns. My recommendation is that you get this book and read it. It's fairly extensive. It's very informative in reference to giving you a history of sundown towns in America. Anyway, it was a real thing. You know what I'm saying? It's definitely a real thing. And if you were African American and you were, in a town and the sun went down, the violent things had happened to you. Now we see today in today's world what happens to African Americans with cell phones, with video phones, with recording cops, beating, killing, shooting African Americans willy-nilly at will and being justified by the system with documented evidence. I could only imagine the horrors that people of African descent experienced before, when they was total anonymity with, people being able to inflict violence on, as Ta-Nehisi Coates says, our Black bodies. So anyway, but these are some flyers that I pulled up to give you reference to that. And this is some of the themes. This is a major theme in Lovecraft Country that's kind of mixed in with some metaphysics there, which is kind of interesting. It's a good take on it. It's real. The monsters come out, so to speak. Here's another. So this is in Arkansas. This is a county in Arkansas. Notice what this flyer says. The city of the Ozark Mountains, right? Cool summers, mild winters, soft water, beautiful scenery, pretty homes, no mosquitoes, blizzards, malaria, drought, and no Negroes, right? We're in there with mosquitoes. They're saying there's no mosquitoes and no Negroes here. Really, honestly, that's what you're gonna say? But this is the consciousness of the people there, right? And I go to the Ozark Mountains 2-3 times a year, because that's where the monastery is located. And there are beautiful people in Arkansas. And then there are people to be cautious of in Arkansas as well. I remember reading in one newspaper when I was there that a KKK member, a man who was a part of the KKK, had escaped jail and was walking down the highway. I was like, what? Massively random, but real. And it's still, that was last year that I was there. That was last year, 2019. So it's real deal, and it's still there. The legacy of white pride, the legacy of Black hatred is still there, and is still in some people, which is really sad to see, but it's just the way it goes. Here's another flyer. This is also from Arkansas. Negroes warned, you got to leave. You're given 24 hours to leave, except one family who were given longer time to sell their property. 7 run off previously. So this is terroristic. You know what I'm saying? Telling us to leave where we're at. You can't live here. Very, very, what's it called? Xenophobic. A xenophobe. Xeno means love. And no, xeno means fear. Phobic. No. Xenophobe. Dang it. I got it. Fear of strangers. Yeah, so xeno is strangers. Phobe is fear. So xenophobe is fear of strangers. Had to recall that for a second. So, the Europeans tended to be highly xenophobic, whereas African Americans are xenophilic. Meaning we have a love of everybody, love of strangers. But the xenophobia inside Europeans is dangerous, because then they start getting violent of things they don't know. We can do a whole show on the history of that, which is sad, but it's there. And so it's true. The truth of the matter is we are all brothers and sisters of the divine essence. But people just don't recognize and realize that. Here's another one. We want white tenants in our white community. Imagine what it was like to be caught in this town as an African American. Imagine the fear you must have been feeling. This is why it was important to create the Green Book, the Green Travel Book. And so this is in Wisconsin. Look at, so the towns that are highlighted in orange, right? All of these spaces in orange are definite sundown towns, right? So they're still trying to do research on what was a sundown town. But this was definite. There was spaces all up in it. Imagine you was trying to travel to see family or go visit or go get a job or whatever. And I've run out of gas plenty of times, and I got a car that gets 40 miles to the gallon. I'm not run out of gas, but I've come close. Man, you had to be on it, because those old cars, they didn't hardly get any mileage to the gallon. And so you really had to pay attention. And if you got caught in a town, driving, and you were out of gas or needed gas and you stopped here, there was a chance you could experience intense racism, told to go somewhere else, had to walk to another space to get gas. There was no guarantee that the place that you walked to would be nice enough to give you gas. It was a horror. It was very, very sad. And look at this. It says, let's face it, rampant black crime is bringing this nation to its knees. If you care about the future of your home, your family, and your race, it's time to strike back. Look at this. This is a scythe. This is a stick. Okay, this is a stick. He's bashing in this man's head because right now this cartoon is meant to play upon the fears of white people that the black man wants the white woman. And so what you should do as the white man is protect your family and bash in this criminal. Does that sound familiar? Like every time, a person of African descent is shot, even lately in this situation that just happened with Jacob Blake, they said there was a knife in his car, but so that gives justification for shooting in the back. That's sad. Sad. That's so sad. But it's related. It's in the psyche. It's in what Marine Ba'ani would call the asili of the culture, to fear, the black man and to eliminate him. This is in the psyche of the culture of these people. And so I've watched people online, go off and defend these people. It's really sad. It's really sad. So here is another list. I think this might be North Carolina. I'm not sure the state. This is Tennessee. But all of these dots, these are Sundown Towns. Minorities not invited, Massachusetts, March 14th. I don't know the year here. 148 to 79 against inviting members of minority groups into town. So essentially this is saying, if your town was all white, you had a sundown town. 90%, there's a 90% chance your town was a sundown town. So it's said that if you want to find out whether or not your town was a sundown town, go into a census and look at the census from 1950 on back. And then you could see whether or not your town was a sundown town and had the ability or had the will or had the intention of enacting violence upon any African American caught within its borders. White men shoot up church. Group is told no allowed after sundown. Another sundown town. Look at this in the newspaper. Black men don't let the sundown catch you. Look at this. This is crazy. Blank. This is Shepherdstown. God help you if the sun ever sets on you here. Look at this. Look at this. They're telling you that they will enact violence upon you. As a group, not as a person. As a person, one-to-one, they're really not all that strong, but they come together as a group and get with you. That's how they work. That's why this book was so important. It was in existence from 1936, I think, until 1966. I said it earlier. Look at what it says. It says, carry your green book with you. You may need it. It didn't say, this is what's going to happen. But when it said you may need it, it automatically spoke to a situation within the consciousness of African Americans that told them they were not safe. So this is part that plays in the ADOS conversation and the BIPOC conversation. If you are not, an African descendant of slaves, so to speak, you didn't experience this. If you came to the United States after our people fought for equal rights, you experienced the benefit of the suffering of our people. You did not suffer with us. That's the difference. So there is a difference. There's a huge, huge difference. We're all one, and we should love each other as, brothers and sisters. But understand that there is a difference. So anyway, that's my take on episode 1. I thought it was pretty dope. I'm not going to tell you what happens. Let you watch it yourself. Peace.